James Coleman. James Coleman, how are you today?
Doing great, man. How are you?
I'm good. I wanted to ask, and so like while we're organizing, right? I wanted to touch base on like the importance of being in the community. I think throughout the summer, like and throughout like my overall like political experience, I praise you for being in the community, for being a man of community. So I wanted to like to touch base on the idea of why is it important for elected officials, right, to be in the community, listening to what the people need.
I think it's important to listen to what people need because you don't know what you're fighting for if you don't talk to folks. They tell you this is the problems that we're facing, then you know what the problem is, and you can collaborate with those folks to then find a solution. So I think that's why it's important to be in the community. You know, we don't know unless we're asking. And so, and all you get an understanding. How can you get an understanding if you're not listening to folks? How can you listen to folks if you're not in their presence?
Yeah.
And so it's been a blessing to be at the 10 for 10 events. It's been a blessing to be with you at the Boys and Girls Club. It's been awesome to see different forums you set up for me and others to come and say, let's really have a conversation, but we got 2 ears and 1 mouth. I need to listen more, right? And so if I'm able to listen and be in those environments, then we can get some solutions to what, because now we know what we're fighting for. Yeah. You're down here, we might see 500, 600 bills a year. So which of those issues are the issues that are impacting our community? How do I know unless I'm engaging with folks? The last thing I'll say, the reason why it's really important for me to engage in community is it keeps me humble. It puts me in a position where I'm not forgetting where I come from and also the people. It makes it very real versus, yeah, we know hunger is an issue, healthcare is an issue, homelessness is an issue, our kids not having adequate resources. We all know those are issues. But until you go into a community and you talk to a mother who just lost her son earlier this year, and she's like, yo, I feel like my son is another black boy who just got killed. And what resources do I have to me? What kind of resolve do I have? And so that to me is like, okay, well, what do we do here at the legislature, or what can I do in this position to influence the environment in that doesn't happen the way that it happened to her to somebody else? Dude, it makes it real to me, and that gives me the passion that fuels me to do the work.
So we talk about being in the community once again. I think sometimes we say community and we use it as a broad term, but I think it's important to be specific, right? So with that being said, why is it important to make sure we're advocating for the people that need advocacy the most, in the sense where I'm from Lubembela, and we just did 10 for 10 just did the Davari Armstrong scholarship. Davari Armstrong was a kid that got killed in our community. Mm-hmm. Kalani Hatter was a girl that got killed in our community. Our community suffers over and over and over again, but like we don't necessarily get the attention we need or deserve because we're not necessarily as loud as possible. So that being said, why is it important that we make sure we represent the people that need like representation the most, in a sense? Because it's equity, right?
Yeah, absolutely is. You know, I grew up in Park Hill, but lived in Montbello. My dad lived in Montbello. I live in Green Valley now. And so I grew up going to rec centers and playing on the east side, 5 Points, you name it. The entire district that I'm blessed to be able to represent in the Senate is home. And I think the reason why it's important that we're engaging folks where they are is because we find ourselves continuing to be the people at the bottom, the people who don't have access. You know the best person who can advocate for somebody is a person who's actually experienced that. Right? It's all love when like, hey, I don't understand how you feel, but I love you generally, so I wanted to support you. But to be like, hey man, I got kicked out of every school that I went to growing up because I saw people getting bullied and I tried to fight on their behalf, and no one understood that. And I learned later on in life to use my words. Yeah. But I was a victim of suspension and expulsion because I was trying to do what I thought was the right thing to protect people. Now I'm in a position, literally my responsibility is to defend the rights, the opportunities for the people that are in the district where I represent. So now I'm all grown up and I've gone through high school, college, come home, and now I can do it in a professional sense in a responsible way. I think those of us who come from something, we gotta not forget where we've come from, and that's why it makes it so important for us to then engage and figure out a way, because we too have come through that. Our community is beautiful. Our community is powerful, strong, and there's so many people who look at our community and they're like, well, that's just Montbello, that's Green Valley, that's way out there. And it's like, no, man, we have a lot of great talent. We got spirit, we got soul, we got opportunity, we got passion, we got skills, we got all these different things. We need an opportunity, and sometimes you stop asking for it and you gotta go take it. So that's what we're here to do, man. We're here to respectfully work with everybody to figure out a way to get everybody what they need. but we have to unapologetically advocate for the folks who continue to not have what they need, so that a rising tide lifts all boats. Most people think that in order for me to get something, I got to take from somebody who's got it. That's not the case. How can we collectively work up together just to get to a place where, I have access, I have opportunity, I can compete fairly? I'm not able to do that if I don't have the resources. So we who are in these positions have to create opportunities for folks to do that.
Yeah. So we talked with Black Men Feed Denver, right? You talked about how you are a Green Valley resident. So that being said, when the Diallo family got burned alive in Green Valley Ranch, how did you advocate or show up for that family?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, the first thing I did was, again, I had to make it real. I just drove to the house, man, and to see it in the condition that it was in, and see the community all out. I thought that was, it was challenging. It hurt, but it was powerful to see the way the community organized and advocated. Continuing to work with folks like Chief Pays in the DPD, Sheriff Elias Diggins, continuing to work with different leaders, Murphy Robinson, Department of Public Safety here in Denver, saying what's going on with the investigation, what information are we finding out. Again, I kind of feel like a citizen, because even though I'm in a position of elected leadership, there are certain things that cannot be shared with me like anybody else, because it'll jeopardize the integrity of looking into this. But for me, it was just being able to reach out to the family, and I find that that's one thing that in our community, people really value and appreciate. Same thing I shared with Miss Tawana O'Neill, who lost her son earlier this year, who I talked about, referenced earlier in our interview. Just to give her a phone call and say, hey, you don't know me. I'm James Coleman. I'm your state senator. I just want to tell you I love you. I want to tell you I'm here for you. Please let me know what I can do for you, how I can support you. Those are the kinds of things that are really important. And then continuing to work to find resolution to the situation and to figure out, like, how do we avoid these things? One thing I tell people all the time is you can't legislate love. Yeah. People are going to do things that aren't right. But I think it's our job to be examples and show that this is not the way it should be done. And then continue to be there for those families. And if there are policies here at the legislature we can work on to prevent these kind of instances from happening, then we got to figure out a way to do it.
Perfect. So I want to do something real fast. I want to try to bridge community and the executive or like administrative aspect of Denver, right? Because a lot of time it's community protesting against the administrative aspect of Denver. You feel me? Mm-hmm. We talk about the community protesting against the mayor's office and everything, but you just talked about how Murphy, the police chief, were working to advocate for the immigrant community. Mm-hmm. So that being said, how did you see the community specifically show up for this immigrant family? Because you just touched on how like the mayor's team or the administrative aspect showed up.
Yeah. Well, I think, again, just being out in the community, like when I drove to the house, there were so many people who were just standing out there. I mean, you never know what they had to do. They had work to do, they had other activities, but being there for that, right? And then continuing in those community settings to advocate for justice, to reach out to DPD, to reach out to other folks who are in positions of leadership. I think that was really powerful. All the different community groups who had a hand in helping to support the family and support other neighbors and folks in the community. I think that's the way community comes together. It's individuals, it's community organizations, it is churches, faith-based institutions saying, what's going on, man? How can we help out? I think what's really powerful about that, though, is not just the engagement of like, hey, we want to show you some love and provide a meal for you or whatever. Like, that's dope. But I think the other thing that's really important too is that when people say, what are we going to collectively do to impact policy? What are we going to collectively do to impact the law? And we saw that with Senate Bill 217 this last year. It's different from that situation that happened in Green Valley. But when we transfer that energy, transition it from let's have some community time to mend, to deal with the trauma. Now let's go fight. Like, let's not just leave it there in the neighborhood. Let's take it to city council. Let's take it to the state legislature. That's why bills like 217 passed regarding integrity of law enforcement and police accountability, because of all the people who were protesting out front on the West Steps. That bill and those kinds of bills get run all the time and they die. The reason why those kind of bills get passed and policies change is because people, they convert that energy, that community, that passion into something else. It doesn't have to be policy, but in my world it is. I want to know, what can we do now with the energy to make it so that these things don't happen anymore?
Perfect. As we're closing off, I wanted to ask, what's your legacy?
Man, what's my legacy? You are, man. people like you, because I think a lot of times my style of leadership isn't always flashy. It's not always sparking fire. You know, it's just let's just figure out a way. Like, I find myself more times than not to see the truth is closest to the middle.
Yeah.
And we're so polarized. I'm not that cat. I'm not all the way over here, all the way over here. At the end of the day, I don't care about none of that, because as a black man, somebody who grew up in the city, was raising family in the city, and generationally has been here, and we've been here in America, and also somebody with indigenous roots. My father grew up on a Native American reservation in Oklahoma. It's Choctaw. It's called Watonga, Oklahoma. Where, like, I have a lot of, I should be the one that should be lighting folks up. But instead, I'm like, nah, I'm not trying to, like, fight nobody. I did that. Like, remember we had that conversation? Yeah. I did that before, right? I don't need to fight nobody. What I need to do is I need to fight for the policies, for the resources, for the funding, for folks to be able to get what they need. That's not always sexy. It's not always in the magazines. But when I see you, bro, everything you do is attached to an action. That's what's powerful about it. And I think that if I could just serve as an example, a guy like Wellington Webb did that for me. When I was in 7th grade, he walked into my classroom. So every time I get a chance to go to a classroom, or every time I get a chance to hang out with young brothers like you, that's a dope tie, by the way. I see the Denver in there.
Thank you.
I just distracted. Denver tie. I just want to be I want my legacy is living, not leaving, but it's like living. And right now you're here, you're doing the work. So I'm just waiting for you to run for office, man. Peter Lubembela, let's get it.
I appreciate you, Senator James Coleman.
Yeah.
I want to call you Brother Coleman,
Absolutely.
Brother James, because you're my brother's keeper.
Thank you.
And I see how you fight for the community over and over and over again. I want to say thank you for that. In Washington, D.C., right, I wake up at probably 4 o'clock in the morning, as you guys see on Facebook, and I text good morning to James Coleman. And he responds every morning within like 2 minutes, because it's amazing how somebody with so much power can have so much humility. So I'm grateful for this opportunity for you to sit down with me, to give me your time. Thank you very much for being my brother's keeper. Thank you very much for being my Melo's friend, and I appreciate you.
You got it, bro. Appreciate you too, man.